Welcome. Thanks for joining me. I'm Kira from kirawoods.com, and today I'm going to look at the court cards, in particular the wands. Now, I'm answering some number of questions from both clients and also from students really struggling with the court cards and have said, look, can you do a bit more? For those of you new to my channel, welcome. Thanks for coming. You'll find I've already done a video on each of the court cards as a suit that you might find useful to have a look at. But in this one, I'm going to look at just the page. Okay, so I think of the court cards, they always begin with the page, or depending on the deck you use, you might find this depicted in a slightly different way. But you'll always notice that the imagery in tarot will be of something that's sort of young, youthful, and that is very much associated with the page energy. And so, okay, so when you get this card, the Page of Wands, the first thing you might want to do is remind yourself, what is wands? Okay, because it is the wands energy. It's the resonance of that passion that comes with wands, that desire, the spark, you might say, the divine spark, so divinity. The persons, you might find that spark comes out when the person feels very engaged, very passionate, so they might seem enthusiastic. You might find there's sort of that competitiveness comes out, inspiration. So it's about action. So wands is fire, so it's action. And if you ponder what it is, when do you feel fired up? When do you feel a desire to create action? Creation is therefore part of wands energy. So it's manifestation. So if you think about then the wands, okay, so the wands are the beginning of the court cards. So it's youthfulness. It's what does a young person, you might find if you think at how would a 6 or 7 year old, or in this day maybe a 5-year-old, look at the situation. When they look at a spider, when they look at a plant, when they look at, you take them to the zoo and they're looking at an animal or something, what is their response like? They're curious. They're absorbed. They're in the moment. That is page energy. And if you're struggling with understanding the court cards, I often feel it's useful to perhaps look at your environment, look at others in your environment, look at yourself, and the sort of actions that you might take in terms of this page, or the things you might do that feel like they kind of depict some of the qualities of the Page of Wands. And you can go to my other video and get way more in depth specifically on those qualities, which are probably useful. I'm not going to go there today. So now you might say, well, I'm an adult and I get this Page of Wands in a reading. So what is happening here is it's like as an adult, you're being asked to looking at something from that place of newness, of feeling in the spark, the regeneration of maybe your heart or your soul. And none of the elements work in isolation. So notice I used heart there, because remember, fire is part of love, and you'll find fire is part of how Pentacles came about. And so they're all intertwined. Try not to get too bogged down in thinking, oh, I've got to isolate one element from another, because that's not how life is. Just like your body, it's all integrated. So it's the same here with the Wands card. Also, if you really, just get a mental blank, and it happens. Any tarot reader that tells you they don't is perhaps either a little delusional or pulling the wool over your eyes. Because we all have moments where we look at a card and maybe we feel mentally blank. And often when that happens, for me, I think, okay, so what's going on here? There's obviously a barrier, restriction. Perhaps that energy is in a slightly more elusive form and I have to sort of go into it in a different way. Or perhaps the client is blocking that. That is really a key part of the message. But let me go back to, I also always come back to my imagery, because that's what I love about the Rider-Waite, is the imagery is full of information, and it is so, it says it all. It is all in the imagery, and we're turning the energy into words. So if you take a close look at this imagery, what do you see is happening? Well, here is this figure of this young person gazing with tremendous intensity and awe of this growth that is occurring at the top of this wand, which of course is planted in the earth here. So right off, you're being indicated that there's something about curiosity, about maybe investigating something or looking at something with a sense of awe or spark, being open to examining something, being open to maybe this newness. So in your situation, is it about a new love or a new relationship, or about a new way of looking at a business or a new way of looking at your situation? Or is it about being aware of maybe this newness? Well, where's it coming from? So is this part of a new dream that's evolving? Is it a new passion that's coming up in my life? What is this growth? Is it that I want to put energy or need to put energy into growing something completely new in my life? Or is it that I need to put my focus somewhere different? So it is the purity of the page that is really, I think, important resonance here. It's the purity, and it's the focus, and it's the willingness to just take the risk, to take a moment and look and just love something for what it is and where it is, without getting too bogged down perhaps in the intellectual adult mind that wants to jump ahead and go, oh, but that means this, and this, and then I'll have to do that, and that. So the page isn't going there. The page, like maybe a 5, 6, 7-year-old, they aren't bogged down, maybe even all the way up to a sort of 11-year-old. If you have some young people in your life, look to see how they engage something new. Where do they go? Where's their love and their passion? You know, it's a little bit like when they first get on a ride at a theme park. You know, they just want to jump on and see what it's like. They actually don't think about the consequences, because that comes later, and that's where the court cards go. They evolve. But right now we're not getting into the what if, how will I, what are the consequences? The page doesn't go there. Okay. So as an adult in that moment, whatever we're looking at, we're not going there either. You know, the adult perhaps in this moment, if you get this card, is taking that childlike approach of realizing this is a beginning, it's a reflection, and the adult just wants to embrace that within that moment. So it's stopping. It's just looking. It's just feeling. It's allowing that fire, that eternal spark to rise up. You know, I've written some notes here, and I've sort of talked about to myself that the page is that lighter youthfulness we want to bring to something new. Otherwise, if we get too bogged down into what if, how will I, we can often put the fire out. So if you're newly starting to build a fire, if you squash that, those new embers as the the kindling takes off, you're going to put that fire out too quickly. If you throw the coal on, yeah, you're going to lose that fire. Yeah, we all know that, right? We're not thinking of coal these days, but if you throw too much wood on, or it goes out. You've got to let the air come up and if I'm trying to remember the long time since I've built a fire, but the air come up and have, so you've got to cross the kindling to create the airflow, so that there's that rise of the energy and let it sort of take off on the kindling. It's the same thing. So that's what's happening with this page. What else have I written? So it's the start of the project. It's the aha of the project. It's that, as I said, that divine spark. It's maybe the announcement to the world about it. It's maybe the announcement to ourselves about it, that this is something new, but maybe this is something really important in my life that maybe I haven't really been paying attention to. It can the page can also be the messenger. So now we come down to, is the page you or someone else? So often people get stuck on this, and I think try not to get too bogged down, because how it is will represent itself in the reading. So you'll know pretty quickly into it whether it's the person getting a message from someone else. And often I find we draw someone else in. I know in my own life, somebody will come in with these characteristics because for whatever reason, I'm not paying attention. I'm not engaging in it. And so somebody will come in and they will represent it, and that will kind of inspire me. That will highlight for me. I'll see that, and that will trigger something in me to realize, aha, I need that. So you might find this friend or this message or this information comes to you from another source, and that it's the same. It's all energy, remember. So whether it comes from someone coming to you with those attributes or characteristics to remind you, or whether you find it just sparking and evolving and presenting itself in yourself, it's the same thing. So trust that however you see it is right, and it's okay. Now, if you're finding that you've got this page and you just can't, I don't know, I can't get there, I'm too worried about the future, I'm too worried about, well, how will I do it, and what are all the steps, and, do I build a website, and, do I start Facebook ads, and, do I launch a YouTube channel, and et cetera, which I find is all that mental stuff that we get into, which is often being driven by perhaps the night, or maybe part of the king coming through. But here you're being told, no, you need to first get that fire burning through the page, because it will go out if you don't do something with it. That's the thing. It hasn't evolved. It hasn't found its place yet, which is why the page is at the beginning of the court cards. If you don't use it, you will lose it type idea. So you don't really lose it, but you might lose that spark, and then you've got to have another experience to get that spark to come back. So, the universe will just send you something else, and the next time around it might be quite left field or so forth and whatnot. So you'd look in the reading like, is there a tower card coming up, or is there something else that's going to come up to really push that change if the person doesn't embrace it. So you might find that you'll know you're a bit blocked on this energy if you're feeling a bit indecisive, if you're finding you're getting confused, too bogged down in details, if you're feeling, if I do something new, it's too complex, it's too disruptive, my life is just going along in a nice little pathway. Well, is it really? You might be asking yourself. You might find the page might indicate you've come to completion of something. So you might find the cards before have indicated something's coming to an end. And this is the new thing. And that in itself can feel a bit like, but I thought I would just travel on to a new phase of whatever I've been doing. Something new. That can feel quite overwhelming for an adult. For a young person, it's like, okay, going to something new now. Fabulous. And that's a little bit the attitude we need, which can be very challenging. Don't get me wrong, the bills are still got to be paid. I know what that's like. And you're like, hell, I've got to start something new. But how long will it take before I'm generating enough money to pay my bills, and the rent's still going to get paid, the landlord won't wait, and I still got to pay the electricity bill, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I totally get it. Take a deep breath and realize that this is an opportunity, a spark. It's not going to take off overnight, but you can feed it. You can fuel it. You can put a little bit of kindling on it. You can open yourself to it and let it rise up in you. And that's a little bit, I think, the trust element that comes with the Wands energy. You know, Leos often demonstrate Wands energy really well. They just go for it, yeah? Love that Leo energy. And I think you can learn a lot from that, for example. You might also find that the page might come up if you haven't finished a project. So it might indicate that you think you've finished something, but you haven't. And that's just sort of talks a little bit about, that's particularly if there's blockage. And it might talk about the relationship between you've embraced all of the king energy and you haven't actually solidified the part of what you were doing or the thing you're working on, how it fits with your essence, your soul, your creative spark, your creative imagination. So you might find there's a piece of the puzzle inside you that feels unfinished, and that might come up here to remind you that perhaps there is still another piece for you to grow and develop. Yeah, so when you'll know this energy is in block, if you're feeling indecisive, if you're feeling a lack of self-confidence, if you're feeling too driven for it to go from A to Z without the journey. I know it's a cliche, everyone talks about the journey is the important thing, and I love hearing it, but by God, it's difficult to travel on that road. But the page is a little bit telling you that, you know, it's a little bit like taking a moment and stopping and remembering what you've accomplished and celebrating what you've done and hugging yourself for the fact that you're a great mum or a great dad or you're an excellent employee or you show up for work every day and you're great for, you're really kind-hearted to everyone at your workplace, and you're kind to your neighbors, and you do, and just taking that moment, sometimes the page can simply be that, reminding you to love yourself and to feel your essence and how everything you do in your life, because it is action, everything you do, how it affects everybody else, and all the goodness that you as an individual put out to the world, and that is a blessing for everyone else and for yourself. And I do think that this beautiful page, I'm just looking to see if there's anything else I made a note on. Yeah, so I hope you found that useful. I was going to get into looking at the page with a whole bunch of other cards, but I think I'll do that later on, because I was going to talk to people about today, and reminding, I often think when I think of the Page of Wands, I'm also thinking of the Ace of Wands, because it's the spark, it's the beginning, it's the divine. And I often think that when I see any card that has a single wand in it, I think of some of the other cards that go with it. So I'm thinking here, the Magician. This is a wand. For those of you who maybe are new to tarot, this is the wand. This is acknowledging the divine spark of the Wand's energy. And here it's like the Magician brought it down and is bringing it to earth, which is what is happening here. This is about your day-to-day life. This is about your interaction with other people. This is about you and yourself. Here, this is about your connection to spirit and how you, through that energy, bring about this type of energy. And then you'll notice the wands, here we're talking about that same, this is the Page of Wands in terms of thinking about career. Here it is when we're battling our essence or our message with somebody else, that bantering and so forth and whatnot. Or here it is about where we have to leave a decision, a wands, something we've been working on behind, and something new has come along. But when you see this page, if you're struggling in a reading and you're not sure, take a deep breath, look at the imagery, ask yourself, what do I see? How do I feel about it? You can't go wrong starting there. And don't get too bogged down in all the intellectual meanings of all the cards. I find perhaps that sometimes can hold you back from really experiencing the tarot in all its glory. So, thanks very much. Really appreciate it. Hope you found this useful. I love dialogue, so because it really helps me. It helps me with my learning. So please share with me your thoughts and your views and your vision of how you find the Page of Wands. Have you experienced it in your life? Do you see it in others? What is your understanding? You know, I feel there's no one way of understanding a card. There's no one meaning for any of the cards in the tarot. And we all learn from each other. So please share your comments, your thoughts. And please, happily dialogue with each other on my channel if that suits you. That would be lovely for me to see. So thanks again. If you haven't, you can subscribe here if you want to follow my channel. And I do private readings, so I definitely love offering, and I do offer, and I that's how I pay my bills. Is I offer readings for a small fee. And for those of you who happen to be in maybe the UK or the US, the exchange rate's fabulous in your favour at the moment. So if you're interested and you feel like having a reading, please go to my booking, which you can find a link there, or you can go to my website and find my booking there, and it'll guide you all through, and whatever time zone you're in, it does it automatically. Love technology for those sort of things. So fabulous. Have a great day. Thanks a lot. And I will, the next video I'll work on doing some stuff around the night. Cheers. Have a good day. Bye.